Okay. Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this next level webinar titled What You Need to Know About COBIT5 Framework. This webinar will be presented by New Horizons instructor Michael Peasley. During the session, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat box and Michael can go through and answer them as he has time. So Michael, it is all you.
All right, thanks a lot, Brian. Welcome to this seminar, if you will, a series on COBIT5. As you can see right there, there's my photo. Although someone told me I'm kind of guilty. That's about a 4-year-old photo. I think I need an update one. Someone told me my beard's a lot more gray. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's a reasonable representation of me. I've been with New Horizons since 1998. Started as an instructor, did some time, if you will, as a manager, as a sales manager, product manager. A lot of people thought when I was the product manager, I was in IT, though I was technically in the marketing department. In 07, late 07, 08, I decided to get back in. I wanted to get back into the classroom, so I've been doing that ever since. And I've since achieved the PMP and the ITIL expert is an infrastructure management. We're going to talk about that one specifically coming up when we talk about the COBIT5 itself, which is the topic that we have here. I'm also a Lean Six Sigma, Lean IT technology specialist in Microsoft Project and CompTIA Project Plus. So that's who I am and what brings me here. So let's talk about what brings all of us to here. What is COBIT5 and who is ISACA? Because ISACA is who the vendor is, if you will. It was the sanctioning body behind the COBIT, the developers of it. How does COBIT5 relate to ITIL? ITIL is the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, and we're going to talk a little bit about the ITIL. It comes out of the UK, but it is an infrastructure management framework designed at delivering value-added IT services. And in previous versions of the COBIT, you could kind of look at the COBIT5, previous versions of the COBIT, and ITIL is kind of being kind of in competition with one another. We're talking COBIT5 in here, and really, if you look at it, COBIT5 is now designed to kind of sit over the top of the ITIL, or the ITIL is designed to be integrated into the COBIT5. We'll talk about that as a bit goes along. There's a lot more people, I think, have familiarity with the ITIL at this point here in America than the COBIT. And then we'll talk a little bit about what the value proposition of COBIT5 is for businesses. Now, that's going to be a rather generic treatment. At the end of this session, at the end of this slide deck, and Brian, I'll talk with Brian, we'll find out how we're going to make that available to you. I have no problem sharing the slide deck. I have a link to the ISACA website where they have, and I'll show you a screenshot of this a little bit coming up here, where they have industry by industry breakdowns, white papers, case studies of who, in terms of what organizations have used COBIT and the benefits they've derived. So, in terms of the limitation, in terms of the time we have for this session, I'm going to talk about kind of the generic value proposition. If you're looking for something much more specific to that, I'm going to kind of show you and provide you the link to the ISACA website where they provide that. And then, the reason we're hosting this is to introduce this type of curriculum to you, but let's be perfectly honest about it. We are a training company, so not surprisingly, I'm going to talk about a little bit about the current course offerings and future course offerings. I'll be honest with you, COBIT5 is one of these things that is kind of in the early adoption stage, I would say, here in the U.S. I was teaching ITIL back in 08 when I came back in the instructor pool, and it was very sporadic training. And now, in terms of New Horizons, ITIL training is one of our more frequently offered titles, especially the foundations. So I'm expecting that COBIT5 is going to potentially go through a similar type of a development path in America, I guess, in our markets, which is going to develop or have us have future course offerings at a later date. So ISACA is this nonprofit global association, and you might remember them as the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. And I've never heard of an organization doing this. It used to be called, previously known as, they now go only by their acronym. And I don't know of any organization who has said, we're just the acronym, we're not the underlying words, but that's what they say, to reflect the broad range of IT governance professionals it serves. So if you were to go to isaca.org, and you can see up here, there is your web URL. Again, that's going to be on my link page coming up here a little bit later on, or at the end of the presentation. There is an entire COBIT5 section on the ISACA page. One of the things that you're probably more familiar with potentially are some of the other ISACA certifications, the CISA, Information Systems Auditor, Information Security Manager. The one that the COBIT really, if you will, kind of aligns up into at a higher level is this Corporate Governance of Enterprise Information Technology. So if you want to think about where the paths are in terms of certification above and beyond just COBIT5, really the CGEIT, there's actually an ISO standard for CGEIT, and that's really what the COBIT is trying to accomplish. We're going to talk about what that truly means here in just a minute. And then there's a risk management certification through ISACA as well. So let me drop back here to explain the COBIT. Let me explain the ITIL a little bit. So the ITIL is an acronym, as they both are. As a matter of fact, the ITIL, Information Technology Infrastructure Library, COBIT, Controlled Objectives in IT. Now, that's a little bit of a violation of all acronym rules, but we won't hold it against the COBIT. So just so you know the acronyms we're throwing around. But the ITIL, Good Practice Framework, developed initially from third-party service provider business practices. So here's the idea. We are an internal IT service provider providing IT services to our business. That's a bank, a hospital, a car manufacturer, whatever. We need to behave like a third-party service provider, as in provide services to our internal customers that provide more value to the business than the cost of supplying or providing those services. The idea is that your third-party service providers, companies who their business is service provision, if they are up and running, functioning, profitable, they must be able to sell it for more than it costs for them to provide it. If we can emulate that internally, IT goes from being viewed as a cost center, as a black hole of money. It transitions into a profit center, if you will, a good investment from a business standpoint. When we give IT $1, it's not throwing $1 down a black hole. We are going to expect that IT is going to give us $1.05, $1.10 in benefits for every dollar spent. And if we, the internal IT service provider, can do that, well, guess what? We have gone from being a cost center to adding to the bottom line, a profit center, a good investment for the business. Implementing and supporting cost-effective, value-added services. Now, here is where we see the need at times for ITIL, or excuse me, the COBIT in addition to. The ITIL is limited to governance of your IT department, your IT entity, and can be constrained by a lack of enterprise-wide IT governance, and that is what the COBIT seeks to provide. A quick little example of this. I was teaching a class, an ITIL class, with a group of people in an IT department for a local health system here in the Detroit metro area. They had just deployed it was designed and agreed that their new email system was supposed to be continuously available. Now, when we talk in the ITIL, we talk about continuous availability, and even a lot of IT people do not understand what continuous availability truly is. Continuous availability is it's never down. 24/7, 365, it's never down. Not for maintenance, not for anything. They told me that they had just done this, and I said, well, why in the world would you do that? Why would you institute a continuously available email system? And they said, well, the business told us we needed to do it for patient safety. And I said, that's bogus. Now, I don't know if any of you are in the healthcare industry, but to question patient safety as a driver, well, that's kind of not very firm footing. But what I said to them is, I am not counting or considering patient safety to be a false driver. What I'm saying is that does not justify a continuously available email system. They said, Mike, we're a hospital open 24/7. I go, yep, so what? Don't care. Does not justify a continuously available email system. I said, because here is the ultimate extension of that. What you are saying is that if I come to your hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday when we would have scheduled maintenance windows, which would allow us to not be continuous, just let's say high availability, you're telling me that if I come to your hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning and exchange is down, that I'm going to die? That imperils my health? And they said, no, Mike, we're not saying that. I said, yes, you are. When you allow patient safety to be applied to as a driver for a continuously available email system, that you spent a ridiculous amount of money and is not truly cost justified. And some of the people in the room said, yeah, but Mike, the business makes us do that. And I said, well, that's a problem for you, because the business perceives you to be a black hole of money. And a lot of people kind of looked really insulted when I said that. A woman in the front row who was a director level person said, yep, every year when we do the budgets, that's what they say. What in the world are we getting for all that money we're spending on IT, or that IT is spending? Excuse me. And there's the rub. IT is not spending too much money. The business is spending too much money through IT. Thus the need for enterprise-wide IT governance. Here comes the COBIT. The COBIT5 describes the principles and enablers that support an enterprise in meeting stakeholder needs, specifically related to those use of IT assets and resources across the whole enterprise. The ITIL really just talks, and we're going to look at the breakdown of this. One of the enablers, one of these enablers that they talk about up here, are IT processes. So the ITIL is a component of this. But beyond just being a component of this higher level framework, the COBIT5 is adopted by the business. So the business says, we have governance of IT across the enterprise. The ITIL is left imploring the business to be wise consumers of IT services. But if the business decides to not be wise consumers, well, they can go ahead and do that. They can force us to create a continuously available email system that is not cost justified. There are services, systems that are cost justified for continuous availability. Email, as a general rule, is not one of those. You say, well, what's the problem with if it's higher availability? We are spending more money, and at the end of the year, that's what funnels into this perception that IT is a black hole of money. So the COBIT, in effect, says that what we all do, and it's expressed through something they call the goals cascade, All of our goals, especially in the use of IT and information technologies, right, need to align with the needs of the ownership of the organization. Making sure that the people running the organization are doing what's in the best interest of the organization, not what's in the best interest of just them and what they want. Kind of keeping the business from being spoiled, petulant children on some level, or behaving like one. So, ITIL, please be a good consumer of information technology. COBIT, it is your responsibility as a member of this organization, not necessarily in IT, to be concerned about the governance and efficient use of information technology. So what's driving that? More stakeholder involvement. People want what they want. We have pretty high-end needs for our services, IT services. What we expect continues to go up. Well, if something can be provided through IT that provides value to the business, we need to do it. If somebody wants us to do something that does not provide value to the business, we need to not do it. So we need to have stakeholders involved to make those determinations. You know, there's an awful lot. Outsourcing can be a very negative thing in a lot of companies. The reality is that everybody in IT outsources some portion of their service delivery. And oftentimes, the business will start to go out there and start trying to outsource IT. Well, let's all make sure we're doing that under the umbrella of IT enterprise IT governance. The ever-increasing volume of information. Think about the amount of information your organizations have to store and to protect and to make available. Now, here's the thing about that. This is where this really comes in. Another place where the COBIT5 drivers come into here. One of the things beyond the volume of information that we're seeing is the expectation that our data is available everywhere all the time, as in ubiquitous availability of our data. And while some of that in the past might have been overblown, think about the business value of the data that you can access through your smartphone, through your laptop, through web-based services, through cloud-based services. All of that needs to be used as needed based off of business justification. Because IT is an integral part of pretty much every business. I keep asking people, tell me an industry that doesn't have IT. And you know, you go to something like farming. Go out and look at farming technology these days. I'm not just talking about tractors in terms of that technology. I'm talking about satellite technology, modeling, forecasting, database for crop rotation and fertilizing. There pretty much is not a business these days that does not, maybe not revolve around IT, but certainly have serious IT involvement. I need to have end-to-end management and governance framework to make sure that what we are doing is ultimately in the best interest of this company. Now, I don't want to get into a whole bunch of contentious examples, but whether it's the plan to give bonuses to senior executives at the VA last year, despite all that was going wrong at the VA, or look at the litany of businesses that went out of, financial institutions that went out of business during the Great Recession we just came through, and those executives who parachuted out with multi-million-dollar parachutes, severance packages as a reward for tanking a company. To me, all of those are examples of a lack of a governance framework. If you, Mr. or Mrs. CEO, made decisions that almost put us out of business, that cost the company millions of dollars, who in the world negotiated a contract with you where you get rewarded with multi-million-dollar payments for doing so? It indicates to me a lack of a governance framework. If I owned a company, there is no way I would have a contract with my CEO whereby when I fire him or her because they have ruined my company, that I owe them multi-million dollars. Would never do it. And I think that's another one that we have seen, and there's a lot going on in our business world that has kind of short-circuited a lot of that governance that is out there. Whether or not it's been fixed, well, I'll leave that alone. Better control over user-based IT solutions, because a lot of times the users, the business users, they believe they know how to manage IT. They really don't, but there is some of those user-based solutions. We need to manage that, alignment with other guidance and integration of other ISACA frameworks and any other of our improvement frameworks. So this is where we're going to get into the structure. So COBIT5 directly addresses the needs of different viewers, all of the different stakeholders, with an emphasis again on the ownership stakeholders and what we all need to do to map to those needs. And there are going to be more of these practitioner guides. They're kind of developing it. Initially, there are 3 volumes. There's the framework, the reference guide for processes. I think they might even change the name of that to the enablers guide. And then the implementation guide. So there is a COBIT library, if you will. The ITIL library is made up of 5 books. Currently, the COBIT5 is made up of 3 volumes. Now, the actual structure of the framework is really through these 2 things here, your 5 principles and 7 enablers. So let's take a quick look at those. Meet stakeholder needs, not exceed them. Make sure that they are true needs, requirements, not wishes, wants, what they actually need, what the business needs. And what most businesses need? Well, to make money. If you are a for-profit. You know, a lot of people, when I say things like that, they're like, that's kind of offensive. Is it all about making money? Well, kind of. You know, even a not-for-profit needs to make sure that they balance the books. But then we also need to know, well, who are we as an organization and what are we trying to accomplish? Is it making a profit? Is it enriching society? Again, different organizations, different drivers. Covering the enterprise end to end. It is not just an IT thing. The governance of IT is not just an IT thing. I was talking about the financial side of it. Here's a completely other one. Information security is not just an IT thing, right? I think we could all probably agree on that. Especially now, again, I don't know the breakdown of all of you if you're going to be either attending or listening to this later. If you were in IT, but IT kind of makes a lot of the policies. IT is in control of much of that, but truly, if we want to make sure that we protect our data, look what happened with Sony Pictures, right? It was somebody's passwords that got hacked. Whether it was someone on the IT side or the business side, that's how it happened. So it's all of us that potentially could be exposing us as an organization to security risk. A single integrated framework, it's kind of interesting on this one. When you look at number 3, the single integrated framework that they talk about is COBIT5. So kind of a weird one. One of the COBIT5 principles is to apply COBIT5. The idea here is that project management methodology, the ITIL, Lean Six Sigma, any number of other project management, process improvement, governance methodologies can fit underneath the comprehensive COBIT5. Why? Because it's a holistic approach. Everything. And this is truly the reality of this. This also is one of those comparisons with the ITIL. The ITIL tries to do a holistic approach. Unfortunately, it's the whole that it can holistically approach is just IT. And if you really look at how a business uses IT services to derive value, it's not just the technology, it's not just the IT people, it's the business people, it's business process. All of that works in conjunction to accomplish this corporate or enterprise-wide governance of IT. We don't go out there and deploy a new service, a new system, spend a bunch of money on it, and then the business doesn't train the user, so we don't get the value out of it. That type of holistic approach. And then this last one, separating governance from management. That's what I was talking about earlier, of these companies that kind of got away with I don't want to call it murder, but it wasn't murder, but I'm going to call it malfeasance or negligence. Maybe I could get sued, hopefully not. There was a gentleman, I'll call him a gentleman, who was running Bank of America, and for about 8 years, Ken Lewis. He ran that company as the CEO, so the chief executive. He was also the president of the board of directors. And the only way they eventually eliminated and got him moved out of that company, was by changing their corporate charter to separate, saying that no one individual can be the CEO as well as the chairman of the board of directors. Why? Because him doing both of those roles violated this. Not because it violated this, but that's why one of the reasons I would say this thing exists, this principle. Executive management needs to do what is best for the organization. Unfortunately, sometimes, and this is a very classic example, not just that gentleman, where a CEO, executives, can make a lot of money by demonstrating short-term gains. And then the problem with that becomes those short-term gains end up being long-term catastrophes. And that's pretty much what happened there at Bank of America. He oversaw the purchase of Lehman Brothers and Merrill Lynch, considered to be two of the absolute worst business deals in American business history. In the 8 years he was both the chairman of the board and the CEO, the stock price was decreased by 50%, took a bailout from the government, took a severance package upon completion of destroying that company of $86 million, which funneled into his north of $150 million total compensation over an 8-year period. All right, not just beating up on him. What does he care? He's fabulously wealthy. My point is this. If it's my company and I am not asleep at the wheel, there's no way in the world that I ever sign a deal where, as this CEO leaves, I've got to pay him a king's ransom, or her, whoever it might be. It is and you know what? Here is a big problem. That was a case where that company needed to change their corporate charter to accomplish this. We currently have something going on in our business world. They call it corporate incest, and it involves this. We have people who are the CEO of a company, and they sit on the board of directors of another company. And you go over there and you look at that other company, and the chairman of that company, the CEO of that company rather, he's sitting on my board of directors, which means I greenlight your crazy ideas in your company, you greenlight my crazy ideas in my company, and we short-circuit corporate enterprise governance. So this is one of the principles separating management, executive management, from overall governance. Now, in your organization, that might not be anything that needs to happen. It's not something that happens in my organization because the people running my company own the company. This is particularly critical when you have stock or shareholders, right? That's where this need to separate governance from management, and I would say ultimately where the Bank of America one went wrong. All right, so I mentioned that there are these 7 enablers. There's your processes, so your IT processes, and there could be business processes in there as well. So we have our overall principles, policies, and frameworks. If we're going to adopt the COBIT, ITIL, things like that. Things like our organizational structure, our functional entities, the culture, ethics, and behaviors of the organization, grooming those, managing those. We have resource enablers, things like information, services, infrastructure, applications, the people, the skills, and the competencies. So again, this is just a real high overview, but that's what you're looking at in those last 2 slides, really are the structure that the COBIT is built around, your 5 principles and your 7 enablers. So what's the value to the enterprise? The starting point of governance and management activities. It relates to making sure that what we do with IT is what we should be doing with IT, relating it to stakeholder needs. holistic, integrated, complete view of enterprise governance and management of IT. So we all in the business, not just IT, are responsible for utilizing IT effectively, cost effectively, efficiently. It helps to, and the ITIL does this as well, this common language between IT and the business. Now here's the thing, it's not a combination of IT and business lingo. What it really is, the ITIL does this a lot, I said the COBIT really does as well. It's teaching people in IT to become fluent in the language of business, not expecting the business to become fluent in the language of IT. If you are all in IT, you probably have seen a case where you watched an IT person speaking IT to a business person, and you could see the complete blank stare of confusion on their face. It's consistent with generally accepted corporate governance standards, and so it could also help meet regulatory requirements, which could be another driver or value. Now, those are very generic, and as I mentioned, I'll make sure that Brian, I will find out how he's going to supply that out. I'll get you, Brian, this slide deck. Those are very generic. On my resource links slide that's coming up in a few slides here as we get done, it takes you to this specific page on the ISACA website. And beyond the publications, and these are those, the ones that I talked about, those guides, right? There's also training. Those are not links to our training. Those are the courses. Here are these case studies, COBIT-focused case studies and recognition for people who have done things, organizations who have done things, process assessment, a program that you can participate in. There's also a number of articles based off of audit and assurance, risk management, InfoSec, regulatory and compliance, governance and enterprise IT. So if you're looking for those specific drivers that you could potentially leverage to kind of entice your organization to get on board with the COBIT, that's where you would probably go to do some of your research to find it. Like I said, those ones on the previous slide were rather generic. All right, so just to kind of finish up here, right now what we are offering for courses and certifications, the only one that we are currently have on the schedule, as we have a market developed form, we will add them, is the COBIT Foundations exam. We actually have that running, I want to say in a few weeks in December, I'm teaching a COBIT Foundations class. So I know we've got one coming up on the schedule. Please see your local New Horizons account executive for details. So that is the Foundations class, no prerequisite. Pretty much anyone interested in the COBIT. It's a 3-day Foundations course. COBIT5, a business framework for the governance and management of enterprise IT. That is the title of the class. Maybe COBIT Foundations, that's the title of the guide, though. That's the resource, the book. It is through one of the exam institutes out there called APMG. The way that we do the exam is through APMG. There is no training requirement for it. So as we said, there's no prerequisite. So the Remote Proctor Now product is pretty fascinating. You purchase a voucher online to take the exam online. When you want to take the exam online, anytime you want, you begin the exam. The exam, you have to have a web camera, and you are directed to clear the room and to sweep the room with the camera so they can see if you have any of your books open or things like that, or someone there to help you that you're cheating, right? And then you start your exam whenever you want to take it. There is not an actual proctor there watching you. What they do is, if you pass the exam, they say, well, you have passed provisionally. As soon as we review the video of you taking the exam and verify you didn't do anything to invalidate the results, well, you will be certified. So it's through a Remote Proctor Now, through APMG. Also, on the link page, I will provide the link to the APMG. But if you just do APMG, do a Google search, you will find it. In terms of the future offerings, there is an implementation exam and an assessor exam. So those are your your 5 certifications specific to the COBIT5. And those, there are 2 prerequisites. You have to take the foundations exam, not the class, but the exam, and pass. So both of those. And you have to take the course. So you can't self-study. You could self-study for the COBIT foundations if you wanted. You cannot self-study for the implementation or assessor exams. Those exams, when we do, and I'm hoping that we will in the near future, start to offer these, those are a very different format. The foundations is just your standard 50 multiple choice. The implementation assessor exams, those are scenario based. They have an answer rubric. You get a certain number of points for hitting a certain number of correct points by selecting the correct solution. And those exams, I believe the implementation is only 8 questions and the assessor is 10 questions, but they're like 2-hour exams. Those would have to be proctored / invigilated as the term as part of the class. So the foundations exam can be taken without training, price of admission, pay for a voucher, take it whenever. The implementation and assessor, those need to be part of a class. I mentioned this a few times, so there is the information links page, the ISACA homepage, that subpage that had the articles and the case studies where you might find some of those business benefits, and then the Exam Institute APMG, who is the accrediting exam institute in our case. That takes me to the end where I, of course, provide you with my email address again. Don't hesitate to send me an email if you have questions about that. If you have any questions right now, you go ahead and type it into the chat window. If you are listening to this at a later date, well, that's not going to work. So email address should still work. Send me an email, and hopefully I can answer your questions if you have any as you review this at a later date. That's pretty much all I have. I don't see any questions in the chat window. If anyone does, please put them in there, and obviously we'll monitor it for a few minutes. But that is all I have for you. Thank you very much for your attendance today, and I hope you got some value out of this overview of the COBIT5 framework. Have a great finish of your week.
And thank you, Michael, for everything. We really do appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for being on the webinar. I hope that you got something out of it. Like Michael was talking about, the slide deck, I will have him email it to me, and I will forward it out to everybody who was on the webinar, so that way you'll have this information. So, Mike, if you could just send that over to me a little bit later, I can get it out to everybody, okay?
You bet, will do.
Awesome. Okay, well, I don't see any questions coming in, so thanks again. I really do appreciate it, Mike. And for all of you on it, thanks again. For all of you that are watching the recording, please feel free to reach out to Michael. He left his email there for you, so he can answer any questions about COBIT5 that you might have. So thank you, everyone.